Imagine being the son of a legend. You're expected to live up to a name that resonates throughout the world. Brandon Lee wasn't just Bruce Lee's son. He was a rising star with his own powerful story, filled with passion, talent, and an undeniable determination to leave his mark. But just as his career was about to take off, tragedy struck, forever linking his name to that of his iconic father. In this video, we'll take you through the life of Brandon Lee, a life full of incredible potential, heart-wrenching challenges, and an ending that shocked the world. Don't forget to like and subscribe as we explore the life and sad end of this legend in the making. Before Brandon, there was Bruce. Brandon Lee's earliest memories were shaped by the presence of his father, Bruce Lee, a larger-than-life figure whose influence transcended martial arts and cinema. As a child, Brandon trained alongside his father, absorbing both his martial arts techniques and philosophical teachings. He was more than just a martial artist, Brandon once said. He was a philosopher and a teacher. He always pushed me to think beyond appearances. Bruce's rigorous training sessions with his son weren't just focused on physical discipline, but also aimed at instilling principles of concentration, determination, and mental clarity in Brandon. Bruce Lee's career exploded in the 1960s and early 1970s, but the path wasn't always easy. Born in California and raised in Hong Kong, Bruce experienced early success in Hong Kong cinema, even appearing alongside his son in The Kid in 1950, when Brandon was very young. However, breaking into Hollywood was a different challenge altogether. Asian actors were often confined to stereotypical roles, and Bruce himself struggled to find meaningful parts. His big break in the United States came with the role of Kato in The Green Hornet, a short-lived series that became a hit in Hong Kong, where it was known as The Kato Show. Bruce became an international star with films like The Big Boss, Fist of Fury, and The Way of the Dragon, all of which cemented his status as a martial arts icon. When Bruce was working on his masterpiece, Enter the Dragon, he was already a global sensation. However, tragedy struck before the film could premiere in Los Angeles. On July 20, 1973, Bruce Lee died suddenly at the age of 32. He had fallen asleep after taking a painkiller and never woke up. The shock of his passing led to a wave of speculation, with rumors and conspiracy theories surrounding his death. It was like the rumors around Elvis, Brandon would later say, reflecting on the countless speculations surrounding his father's death. Brandon was only 8 years old when his father died, and this loss profoundly affected him. Although they cherished the time they had spent together, he spent much of his life trying to emerge from Bruce's shadow. He was a legend, and I'm proud to be his son, but I wanted to be seen for who I am, Brandon stated in an interview. Bruce Lee's sudden death also left Brandon with a sense of vulnerability. He once admitted in an interview, "When you lose a parent at that age, especially someone as imposing as my father, you start thinking about mortality in a very concrete way." This awareness shaped many of Brandon's career choices as he sought to build his own legacy while struggling with the expectations placed on him due to his father's overwhelming reputation. Being Bruce Lee's son, Brandon's mother, Linda Lee Cadwell, often spoke about her son's difficulty in balancing his respect for his father's teachings with his desire to forge his own path. He didn't just want to be Bruce Lee's son, Linda said. He wanted to be Brandon Lee, a name people would know on its own merit. These early years were marked by a complex relationship with martial arts. Trained by some of Bruce's closest disciples, like Dan Inosanto and Richard Bustillo, Brandon was exposed to the art of fighting from a very young age. Inosanto, who was one of Bruce's closest friends and students, noted that Brandon had a natural talent for martial arts, but he was also fiercely independent. Despite this innate ability, Brandon's teenage years were marked by rebellion and a desire to escape the pressure of being Bruce Lee's son. At the age of 13, in 1978, Brandon stepped back from martial arts, choosing instead to focus on soccer. He played competitively at Chadwick School, located on the Palos Verdes Peninsula in California. Yet his rebellious spirit soon took over. By 17, Brandon had been expelled from several schools for his defiant behavior. Linda Lee Cadwell recalls, "He had this spirit of fire and simply couldn't conform to the strict environments of his schools." Seeking adventure and self-discovery, Brandon dropped out of Chadwick School a few months before graduation and set off on a cross-country adventure, hitchhiking from California to destinations like Arizona and New Mexico. This period of wandering was a pivotal moment in his life, allowing him to reflect on who he wanted to be, beyond the towering image of his father. He later explained in an interview, I needed to break free and discover who I was, and not just Bruce Lee's son. Yet, the pull of his father's legacy was always there, waiting for him to return. I didn't just want to inherit the legend, he once said. I wanted to build my own. After obtaining his GED, Brandon enrolled at Emerson College in Boston, Massachusetts, where he studied theater, marking the beginning of his journey toward an acting career. Forging a legacy beyond Bruce Lee's shadow. Brandon Lee's journey into acting was shaped by the weight of his father's legacy and his desire to create his own identity. In 1985, after returning to Los Angeles and working as a scriptreader, Brandon was approached by casting director Lynn Stallmaster. His breakthrough came when he successfully auditioned for his first credited role in Kung Fu, the movie, a television sequel to the 1970s series Kung Fu, originally conceived by his father. Despite his initial reluctance to take a role so closely tied to Bruce Lee's martial arts legacy, Brandon eventually agreed to play the son of David Carradine's character. The film aired on February 1, 1986, Brandon's 21st birthday. Reflecting on the project, Brandon said, "It was a tough decision. I didn't want to be typecast solely as a martial artist. But there was a certain poetic justice in taking this role." That same year, Brandon landed his first leading role in Ronnie Yu's Hong Kong action thriller, Legacy of Rage. It was his first and only film shot in Cantonese, marking a return to his father's roots in Hong Kong cinema. Although tensions emerged between Brandon and Yu during filming, the movie was a critical success at the 1987 Cannes Film Festival and earned Brandon a nomination for Best New Performer at the Hong Kong Film Awards. Brandon had a lot to prove, not only to the audience but to himself, Yu said, acknowledging the pressure on him to break free from comparisons to Bruce Lee. In 1987, Brandon appeared in another Kung Fu sequel, titled Kung Fu: The Next Generation. This unsold television series pilot aired as part of CBS's Summer Playhouse. But it wasn't picked up for a full series. The plot focused on Brandon's character, the great-grandson of David Carradine's original character, but the project ultimately failed to resonate with audiences. During this period, Brandon began to shift course, accepting roles that would allow him to move away from martial arts and show more depth as an actor. In 1988, he appeared in the American television series O'Hara. Alongside Pat Morita, Brandon played the role of a villain, the son of a Yakuza boss. Jeff Imada, who worked as a stunt coordinator on the series, advised Brandon to be careful about accepting this role due to its dark nature, but Brandon saw it as an opportunity to expand his range as an actor. He wasn't afraid to take risks, Imada recalled. He was determined to prove he was much more than Bruce Lee's son. In 1990, Brandon starred in Laser Mission, a B-grade action film shot in Namibia. Although the film was panned by critics, it found commercial success in home video and demonstrated Brandon's versatility as an actor. Despite the film's shortcomings, Brandon's performance caught the attention of producers and casting directors in Hollywood. Meanwhile, he resumed his training with Dan Inosanto, one of his father's closest students, but Brandon's approach to martial arts had now changed, becoming more technical and cinematic, aimed at translating the beauty of this art to the screen. Brandon's Hollywood breakthrough came in 1991 when he was cast in Showdown in Little Tokyo, alongside action star Dolph Lundgren. The film, produced by Warner Brothers, marked Brandon's first American feature film, and although it received mixed reviews, his performance was noted. The story followed two police officers investigating the Yakuza, with Brandon bringing a vibrancy and physicality to the role. Released on August 23, 1991, the film grossed over $2 million in the domestic market. While Showdown in Little Tokyo wasn't a major success, it laid the groundwork for Brandon's next significant project, Rapid Fire. Rapid Fire, released in 1992, was Brandon's first leading role in a major Hollywood production. As Jake Lowe, a student who witnesses a murder and becomes entangled with the mob, Brandon delivered a performance that combined action with emotion. This role allowed him to channel his martial arts abilities while exploring the emotional weight of a character who, like Brandon himself, had lost his father. "There were moments when I felt like I was channeling some of the pain I had experienced as a child," Brandon confided about his performance. Rapid Fire debuted at the number 3 spot at the box office, grossing over $4.8 million in its opening weekend and a total of $14.3 million. Critics quickly drew comparisons between Brandon and Bruce Lee, but many noted that Brandon was beginning to carve out his own identity in Hollywood. Robert Lawrence, the producer of Rapid Fire, recognized Brandon's potential and later stated, "Brandon wasn't just a martial artist, He was an actor with real charisma and depth. The film's fight choreography, co-created by Brandon and Jeff Amata, incorporated elements of Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune Do but with a unique twist that showcased Brandon's creativity and personal approach to on-screen combat. During this period, Brandon turned down the lead role in Dragon, the Bruce Lee story, the biopic about his father's life, a decision that was both personal and professional. "It felt too strange," he explained. "I didn't want to play my own father, especially in the more intimate and romantic scenes with the actress playing my mother." The role eventually went to Jason Scott Lee, who later shared that Brandon had encouraged him not to treat Bruce as a god, but as a man with his weaknesses and passions. Despite his growing success, Brandon was determined to emancipate himself from his father's legacy. He signed a 3-film contract with 20th Century Fox and another with Carolco Pictures, positioning himself for what many believed would be a long and fruitful career. However, in March 1993, just as Brandon was beginning to fully assert himself as an actor, tragedy struck, cutting short a promising career. What happened to Brandon Lee in The Crow? Brandon Lee's role in The Crow was meant to be his breakthrough performance, the film that would finally separate him from the shadow of his father, Bruce Lee. Cast as Eric Draven, a man who returns from the dead to avenge the brutal murder of his fiancée and himself, Brandon's portrayal was a perfect blend of intensity and vulnerability. Filming began in 1993, and as production progressed, it became clear that Brandon's performance would leave a lasting impression on audiences. Director Alex Proyas stated, "Brandon brought a depth to Eric Draven that I don't think anyone else could have achieved. He was fully committed, emotionally and physically." However, tragedy struck on March 31, 1993, during the final weeks of filming. In what was supposed to be a routine scene, Brandon's character, Eric, was shot by Funboy, played by actor Michael Massey. The revolver used in the scene was loaded with blanks. But, unbeknownst to anyone, a dummy bullet with a lead tip had been left in the barrel from a previous scene. When Massey fired the gun, the force of the blank cartridge propelled the bullet, hitting Brandon in the abdomen. Everyone on set immediately realized something was wrong when Brandon didn't get up after the shot. He was rushed to the hospital, where surgeons worked for 6 hours in a desperate attempt to save his life. But the damage was too severe. Brandon died from blood loss and cardiac arrest at just 28 years old. The shock of his death deeply affected the crew and cast. Michael Massey, devastated by the accident, later stated, "I don't think you ever get over something like that." He never watched the film and took a year off after the incident. Jeff Most, the producer of The Crow, recalls the last time he saw Brandon Lee alive. "I was in my office on the Carolco lot in Wilmington, and I was on the phone," he recounts. "Brandon was wearing this white shirt, and he walked by, waving to me through the window. I remember the feeling of being with him, the clarity of that moment, the warmth. Sharing with Bruce. I put the phone down for a second, and I waved back to him, and it was like, yes, we're not saying goodbye. I literally told the person on the phone that it was so weird. Brandon is waving to me as if he's saying goodbye to me when he knew he still had 2 weeks of shooting." Brandon's mother, Linda Lee Cadwell, filed a lawsuit against the filmmakers in August 1993, citing negligence for failing to adhere to safety protocols on set. The lawsuit was settled in October of that same year under undisclosed terms, but the incident led to a serious re-evaluation of firearm safety in the film industry. The Crow was nearly complete at the time of Brandon's death, but a few crucial scenes remained to be filmed. Production halted when Paramount Pictures, which initially backed the film, withdrew from the project. However, Miramax stepped in, injecting $8 million to complete the film. Using new digital face replacement technology and employing Brandon's stunt doubles, Chad Stahelski and Jeff Cadiant, the filmmakers were able to complete the remaining scenes. The film was eventually released in 1994, and despite the heartbreaking circumstances, The Crow became a cult classic. Audiences were captivated not only by the film's dark, gothic atmosphere, but also by Brandon's incredibly powerful performance as Eric Draven. Many believed that this role had revealed his full potential as an actor. "There was a depth in Brandon's performance in The Crow that we had never seen from him before," said Jeff Amata, the film's stunt coordinator and a longtime friend of Brandon's. "He completely embodied Eric Draven, this tragic figure seeking vengeance but also love." The success of The Crow was bittersweet. Brandon had previously expressed his desire to diversify into other genres, wishing to explore comedy, drama, and independent cinema. He cited actors like Tom Hanks as inspiration for the kind of versatile career he wanted to have. But fate, as cruel as it can be, had other plans. Just as his father, Bruce Lee, had died in a tragic and sudden accident, Brandon also perished in equally shocking circumstances. The parallels between their deaths reinforced the mystery surrounding the Lee family, forever cementing the legacies of father and son as icons whose lives would be eternally intertwined. Brandon's fiancée, Eliza Hutton, whom he had been dating for nearly 3 years, was devastated by the loss. The two had planned to marry just days after The Crow finished filming. The film was dedicated to both Brandon and Eliza, a poignant reminder of the love and life cut short by this tragic accident. Since his death, Brandon Lee's legacy has continued to grow. Although The Crow inspired several mediocre sequels, none have managed to capture the magic of Brandon's performance. Director Alex Proyas has spoken out against the planned 2024 remake of The Crow, stating that the original is Brandon Lee's legacy. He emphasized, "There is no need to remake a film that, in many ways, was defined by Brandon's presence." Although Brandon's life and career were tragically cut short, his portrayal of Eric Draven in The Crow remains one of the most memorable performances of the 1990s. His death also led to significant changes in how firearm safety is handled on film sets, a legacy that continues to protect actors to this day. As James O'Barr, the creator of The Crow comics, said, "Brandon brought Eric Draven to life in a way I could never have imagined. He gave the character a soul." Brandon Lee's untimely passing left an irreplaceable void, but his talent and spirit endure through his work. Watching The Crow, it's as if Brandon is still with us. His performance testifies to the greatness he might have been if his life hadn't been tragically cut short. Brandon Lee and Eliza Hutton. A love story cut short by tragedy. Brandon Lee's life was marked not only by his rising fame but also by the deep love he shared with Eliza Hutton. Their love story, which began in 1990, was filled with affection and support. Eliza played a crucial role in helping Brandon stay grounded amid the pressures of his career and his family's legendary name. Eliza, who worked as a casting assistant in Hollywood, met Brandon at a time when his career was beginning to take off, and from their first meeting, their connection was undeniable. Brandon was known for his charisma and larger-than-life personality, but with Eliza, he had found someone who could see beyond his public image. "He was a star in the world's eyes, but to me, he was just Brandon," Eliza would later recall. Their relationship quickly blossomed, with Brandon proposing to her in 1992, a few months before he began filming The Crow. "We were planning a life together," she said. "He was my best friend, my soulmate." Their love was a quiet refuge for Brandon, who often found himself struggling with the weight of his father's legacy. Eliza intimately understood this burden and supported him as he sought to forge his own identity in Hollywood. Brandon always wanted to honor his father, but he also wanted to be seen as his own person, she shared in an interview. The couple planned to marry on April 17, 1993, just weeks after The Crow was scheduled to complete filming. Tragically, this future was interrupted when Brandon was killed in an accident on the set of The Crow. Their wedding, which was meant to celebrate their love and mark the beginning of their life together, became a heartbreaking reminder of what was lost. Eliza was devastated by his death, and for years she stayed away from the public eye, grieving privately. "It was as if my entire world collapsed," she would later admit. Linda Lee Cadwell, Brandon's mother, spoke about Eliza with great affection, saying, "Eliza was a wonderful partner for Brandon. She loved him completely, and he adored her. They had so much to look forward to together." Their relationship, though tragically short, was one of the most important aspects of Brandon's life, offering him stability and love during the most crucial years of his career. Eliza Hutton speaks out 28 years after Brandon Lee's death. Eliza Hutton, the fiancée of the late Brandon Lee, broke her silence after nearly 3 decades, following the recent tragic shooting on the set of Rust, involving Alec Baldwin. For Hutton, the death of cinematographer Halyna Hutchins and the injury of director Joel Souza during the filming of Rust tragically echoed the senseless accident that took her fiancé Brandon Lee's life in 1993 on the set of The Crow. Hutton, now 57, expressed her deep sadness and called for immediate changes regarding the use of real firearms on film sets. 28 years ago, I was shattered by the shock and grief of losing the love of my life, Brandon Lee, so senselessly, Hutton told People. My heart aches again for Halyna Hutchins' husband and son, and for all those left in the wake of this avoidable tragedy. Her emotional plea has prompted the film industry to take a closer look at safety measures on sets, particularly regarding the use of real firearms. "I urge those in positions to make changes to consider alternatives to real guns on sets," she emphasized, highlighting the preventable nature of these devastating incidents. Hutton's message resonated deeply, as the parallels between Brandon Lee's death and the tragedy on the Rust set were striking. Like Hutchins, Brandon's death occurred under circumstances that should have been avoided. During a scene, a gun meant to be loaded with blanks fired a dummy bullet, hitting Brandon in the abdomen. Despite hours of emergency surgery, Brandon died from his injuries, leaving Hutton and his family devastated. The grief Hutton experienced after Brandon's death resurfaced following the Rust incident. She shared on her private Instagram account a touching photo of herself and Brandon taken in Venice, Italy, in October 1992, shortly after their engagement. The couple had planned to marry on April 17, 1993, shortly after The Crow finished filming. "There's no such thing as a prop gun," Hutton wrote in the caption of the photo, expressing her frustration and sadness over another preventable tragedy. Shannon Lee's tribute 30 years after Brandon's death. Shannon Lee recently marked the somber occasion of 30 years since her brother Brandon Lee's tragic death. In an emotional message, Shannon reflected on her brother's short but impactful life, reminding fans and loved ones that Brandon's legacy continues to live on. "I can't believe it's been 30 years, Shannon shared in a video posted on the official Twitter page dedicated to their father, Bruce Lee. "But here's what I have to say. His beauty, his soul, his intellect, his creativity are still with us, here with us." Shannon spoke with deep emotion, acknowledging her brother's lasting influence, whose career and life were brutally cut short when he was just 28 years old. "Brandon, we love you," Shannon said, pausing to reflect on his life. "We miss you so much. And we celebrate your life today. That's what today is about. It's a celebration of your life that was beautiful. Too short, but beautiful and meaningful. And we miss you." Shannon's tribute to her brother is part of an ongoing effort to preserve his legacy while advocating for necessary safety reforms in the film industry, especially in the wake of the Rust set shooting, which painfully resonated with Shannon, bringing back memories of her own family tragedy. "It wakes up a lot of emotions and frustration," Shannon revealed to The Hollywood Reporter. "There are protocols that are supposed to be followed. I'm certainly not pointing fingers at anyone, but there's no reason for something like that to happen. These days, with all the special effects and technology we have, there's no reason to have a prop gun or a gun on a set that can fire a projectile of any sort," Shannon explained, calling for meaningful reform. Last January, Shannon also spoke out on Instagram to support a Los Angeles Times editorial that advocated for a complete ban on real firearms in film and television productions. Following the Rust shooting, Shannon wrote, "I think of Brandon every single day," and shared a screenshot of the editorial, which highlighted the unnecessary risks associated with using real firearms on sets. "Even though accidental shootings like these are thankfully rare, too many things have to go right for nothing to go terribly wrong," the editorial noted. Shannon's fight for gun safety isn't just about preventing future tragedies, it's also about preserving her brother's memory. As she said in her anniversary message, Brandon's life, though too short, was beautiful and continues to inspire and resonate with those who loved him. "We will find ways to celebrate him and bring him more into consciousness this year and every year to come," Shannon stated, reaffirming her commitment to keeping Brandon's spirit alive. With this year of remembrances also marking the 50th anniversary of their father Bruce Lee's death, the Lee family remains at the center of an ongoing conversation about safety, legacy, and remembrance in Hollywood. As Shannon poignantly reminded us while reflecting on the premature deaths of Brandon and Bruce, she emphasized the importance of compassion and change, urging the industry to learn from these tragedies. "There should be compassion for all the pain that everyone goes through," she said, speaking of her own grief and the pain of others affected by similar accidents. "No one should ever be killed by a gun on a film set. Period." What are your memories of Brandon Lee?